you would be able to see this, the user type and on-prem sync enabled. So whichever user shows is yes here, it must, these users are coming from the on-prem AD, right? And you see this couple of users are Guru IT 001 user created in on-prem AD, and there one use created for on-prem Active Directory synchronization. This is one is say yes, right? So you can also in a production environment, wherever you see this on-prem sync enabled shows yes, think about there is on-prem Active Directory in exist and it is synced to the Active Directory, to the Azure Active Directory, right? This is what we discussed last class, right? Any question in this?
No.
So this topic is most important. I would suggest please do the practical ones. Okay, and I can build a one VM in Azure itself as a on-prem and do all the process. Okay, and today we'll be going to talk about the continue with the on-prem Active Directory. Sorry, Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory. We need to talk about important topic called as Azure policy. You heard about Azure policy? What is this? Sorry. So you heard about group policy in on-prem Active Directory?
Yes.
How it works?
Like if we have to push any settings on a complete OU or environment, we have to create a group policy, apply those settings on that group policy, and apply that group policy on a particular OU. So it can be applicable to all the users or computers of that particular OU.
Perfect, right? So
For
basically we'll
example,
be
screensaver or some
wallpaper,
watermark notice,
wallpaper.
wallpapers.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So basically we would go to the gpmc.msc is a console, group policy management console, and where we can see there is a hierarchy infrastructure, right? We would see the forest, we would see the domain, we would see that OU structure, right? In that place, right? And there are default policy was already created. Okay, was already created. Two policies. There are two policy. There are default. There are two default policy was created, already created, and linked to default domain policy. The linked to domain and domain controller. Domain is a boundary. Your domain name neil.edu and domain controller is OU, default OU, right? It's a OU, and those policies are, so one is default domain policy and second one is the default domain controller policy. Okay, and this is linked to domain and this is linked to OU, which is domain controller OU, correct? So why I'm explaining this, the same process, same structure, it is be coming into the Azure policy. So but here we do not have any terminology called as a OU kind of in Azure, but we should understand that as in we are not going to apply the policy entire forest. We would be going to the hierarchy called domain. There is a process called as LSDOU, right? LSDOU means what? Policy would be applying local site domain and OU, which is organizational unit. So by default, sorry, by default, every computer has a group policy, local policy, where if you go to the my local machine, you would be going to accessing for the gpedit.msc, which is local policy, computer configuration and user configuration directly. You can go there. There are a lot of settings are there, and we would be going to use the settings depends on the requirement, right? User configuration and computer configuration, that depends on the requirement. We can by default all the settings are not enabled, not configured, and whichever the requirement is meet, and then we will be selecting, will be enable it, right? So same things in Active Directory, we would be going to creating on the policy, where you can go to the creating a policy, you should go to the gpmc.msc, where you can see the group policy object. Okay, group policy object, and there you should create a new policy, and you need to edit the policy and configure the policy. For the configuration, you have the two configuration. One is user configuration, user and computer configuration, right? Depends on the requirement. You can change the setting, you can modify the setting and enable it, right? This is a process we are going to do. Then we need to link where should be link, where we need it. Do we need it for the domain? Do we need for the OU, right? Or do we need for the site? When you talk about the Active Directory, you would have these three areas to be linked the policy. So if you link the policy domain, it would be entire all the users on this domain, it would be get applied. Whatever the settings you are going to changes, if you link the policy in domain, every user, domain user should policy get applied, right? It should be like that, correct? This is my domain, and inside the domain you have the multiple site, and you have created domain controller. If you have the another site, now the policy created and linked to the domain. In this domain, no matter how many sites, how many users, everyone policy get applied. But inside you created a specific OU. This is one of the locations called as a BLR, and you created for the CHN, right? Inside the BLR you created for OL, no, OU called as IT, HR, sales, right? For the Bangalore team. And here also you created for the OU called IT and HR and sales. And you created a user here, which is CHN underscore IT underscore 001. These users belongs to in a CHN, and you created for the user here in IT BLR underscore IT underscore 001. If the policy created and linked to the specific OU, then the policy would apply for the only these OUs, right? And over the in this OU users are there, policy will be get applied. This is how the on-prem Active Directory policy works, correct? So when you apply the policy and domain, every one policy will be get applied. If you apply the policy and domain, every one policy get applied. This is a basic things to understanding that on-prem Active Directory. The same things in Azure policy. When you talk about Azure policy, we need to understand that hierarchy. Okay, Azure policy, we need to do that before we create and assign the policy. So where we are going to policies assigning, for example, now there is a service called as a policy. Okay, in a portal, there is a service called as a default policy. Okay, click on the policy here. When you click on the policy, you would be able to see this definition, okay, and assignment. So what you mean by definition and assignment? Definition comes under for you have the inbuilt. As I said here they were giving the two policy default already created and linked, but they have that all the around thousands plus inbuilt settings already available. This is my local policy. As I said, every by default these policies are available inbuilt, and these are the thousands plus both the computer and user configuration. But same things in Azure, there is a policy definition. By default, there are policy has been created inbuilt. You see this built in the type, right? And you can also go and search for the specific category. You see this all the category here. So Microsoft has already decided, okay, you might need for this kind of policies, and you can use whichever you really needed and have already created. And you can also modify those policies based on your requirement, kind of custom policy. So if you remove this all, and if you search for the specific compute related I need to do, you can select for the compute. You would be able to get the only compute related policy here, which is inbuilt. Virtual machines, all these things, right? Which is a built-in, comes under definition. When you talk about the assignment, right? So I wanted to create my own policy and assign to. When you click on the assign policy, you see this scope. When you click on this here, this is a hierarchy. So now in Azure, the hierarchy, how we talked about in on-prem Active Directory, this policy would be have a boundary called a domain. This policy called as a OU. You can able to apply the policy. In Azure, you can apply the policy directly 3 areas. The first area is, you see there is another, first one is management group. Okay, this is important, you need to understand here. So 3 areas. One is management group. Second one is subscription and resource group. Okay. So now by default, you will not be able to see the management group. Why? Because default, you will not have access for that is in management group. What is that management group here actually? When you go to the home, type here management group, or you see this, click on the management group here. This is a by default, it is a tenant tree group. Remember, okay, this is a by default under the management group. You can have a tenant tree group. This is the first level of you want to apply the policy tenant root group. If your policy applied here, what is happening here? Every one policy will be get applied no matter how many subscriptions are there in this tenant root group. Yes or no? How you apply the policy on domain, and every one policy get applied no matter how many, which site they are, okay, and no matter those are all users, how many users are there, everyone policy get applied. Agreed? Same things in Azure, there is a root, tenant root group. You have options to, but by default it won't be able to see here until you need to enable it. So enable means what? You need to go to the default directory, which is enter ID. You need to scroll down here. You click on the properties. Just concentrate little here. This is the most important, because when you are going to organization, right, you should knowing this. Option is you should be having. You see this? Now, this is my email ID. Can manage access all Azure subscription and management groups in this event, in this tenant. And by default, it says no. Hence, you are not able to see here. I have not enabled here. Hence, you are not able to see in this. When I go to the policy, let me open the policy page, then you can able to see this policy. assignment, and if you're assigning any policy, now when I go to the scope, right, you would be able to see by default there's a two only, subscription and resource group, but it is not showing here. First one is a root management group. Why? Because this is a information, this is a update here. Access management for the Azure resources. It would give you the by default user which you logged in here can manage access to by default any global administrator, no matter how many global administrator, those people does not have any access until you come this place and enable it. The moment you enable it here, right, and this process called as elevate. Okay, elevate the access to management group. So this elevating for this management group, you should say yes. And who is elevated? This user is a owner, or this user is a managing the permissions. You can see this. Click save. So once you saved, you would be able to see this to tenant default directory here, right? Now you can come back here. I just enable it and go to the scope and cancel it. Now again, you should go back to the policy assignment. Click on the assign policy and you can click on the scope. You just refresh it once again. Policy, assignment, assign policy. So anyone has you guys for the, since I'm using for the past subscription, maybe this has a not able to, because it would go to the directly root one, right, which earlier mine was. Anyone has that? It's a free subscription you have available with you, which is can be able to share the screen and you can show me. Do you have that is subscription, anyone? I wanted to show you that is in once you enable the management root group, you would be able to see this, while creating a policy for the root management. Okay, let me relog in this after enabling this. Anyone don't have that subscription now? Guru,
No, mine
Arvind,
is already expired.
Arvind. But take it Azure Pass subscription, guys. One second. Four seven three eight five nine 473. Okay, so when you go to the policy, you would be able to assign the policy, assign a policy. The scope must show you here, should be trying to show you here. Management, Azure policy root management group. Okay, it should be like this. Just I was trying to explaining this one. Do you see this? Can you see this? Okay. The first your policy should go to the management group. it should show here. Then your policy should be come to the subscription. Then you want to go with resources, and same things you would be going to see this way. So since I'm using the past subscription, hence it is might be going to see this in a root level. It should show that is my group policy here when you go. I mean Azure policy. So I have enabled it. Let me just come back here. Turn it. Go to this properties. And you have enabled this, right? So now right, this is all protected now. That is Azure subscription and management group on in this event. But specifically when you go to the management group, you would be able to see this one. Okay. And inside this is you have the root. Inside this you should be able to see this is tenant root group. This must be able to see. Okay, let me just create a one tenant group. Let me just see. Okay, and this is creating for management group for okay test for lab. Okay, this is one of the ID I'm creating, and this is display name. You can create it. Okay, you should not use this all. Okay, just use for the only test for lab. Root management root group for test. Okay, so just for the testing, I'm going to creating here another root tenant group. Now see this. This is important because the hierarchy of the Azure policy and Azure environment, how in on-prem Active Directory we talk about the domain, we talk about the site, we talk about the domain controller, and all the objects are in part of my Active Directory. Same things in Azure. The first root level is a root management, right? And in this root management, you have the all the subscription. Now, if you see this, I just created for the test for lab. Now, this is a default one tenant root group. Under this, you have subscription, and you wanted to change this subscription or move this subscription to the another tenant root. This is possible. Okay, when you go to this subscription, you see this move. You want to do this the existing one, you can do it. Right now, you can say I just created. I should be able to see this. Created another root tenant. Now come back here. Another tab. Go to the policy. Go to the policy. Now go to the assignment. Assign policy. And you can click on this scope. You see this? Can you see this? Now I wanted to apply the policy tenant root group. What is the meaning of this here? Inside this, whatever you have the subscription, all the subscription can be able to apply. And inside the subscription, how many resources or what? No, we will be going to create a policy settings. But whatever you're going to do, where you are going to apply the policy in Azure, there is a scope called as a 3 scope. What are those 3 scope here? The 3 scopes are management group, right? There's a tenant root group. So it was not showing you earlier, but after I created another sub tenant, then you can able to see, and then only you would be able to see that, right? So now I don't want to this tenant root group. I wanted to apply the policy for this, and you can select for this. So if you are not aware about this enabling the management root group, and people think about this was question asked for the last interview. So how do I apply the policy in Azure? So people think about only we can apply the policy in subscription resource group. No, you have the another options called how we can see the hierarchically apply the policy in Active Directory, which is domain, which is OU. Same things in Azure, we would be able to apply the policy on this ways. Just clear? Understood everyone? Guru, Arvind, Chandru.
Yes.
For the scope point of view, right, to the boundary where you can apply the policy. Okay. Now you can decide. After understand, now you can decide this policy. I can go with a specific subscription. Now specific resource group, you can decide it. Okay. So first, most important, we need to understand that is in how this policy defined in Azure. Now let's talk about one example of the taking a policy. How do we create a policy and assign to subscription, right, and see the result, and we can check the result, right? Now the one example, if you say in an organization production environment use cases, we have the multiple department, right? Multiple department, IT, HR, all the departments are there. Now I would like to set up specific IT department, HR department. If they're creating a resource from themselves, take example one is, if they're creating a VM, they must be created specific location. I will not allow to select a different location. These all users and users are belongs to central India. When you are trying to select for the different country, different region, should not allow. Getting my point? The policy I need to create, Azure policy, need to create, okay, specific users or location team, okay, must be created, resource must be, or VM must be created, specific location. So now you can take example. I'm specific restricting to the create resource to the central India. By default, you can select all the region, correct? When you go to creating a VM, okay, when you go to create a VM virtual machine, when you click on create, right, click on create, you would be able to see this all the region, right? You can see that all the region, right? And after apply the policy, you can able to see all the region, but instead of the central India, if you selected some other region, and it would tell you that is in indicating the notification, this policy has been applied, it is restricted, you cannot be select for the this region, you have to contact system administrator, kind of this message will come, correct? So like this, how do I restrict to build or deploy the resource in a specific region, right? Let's go back to the policy now, and you need to go to the assignment, assign policy. In this assign policy, now we understood the scope, how it works. Let's create for the specific subscription. I'm just applying the subscription here, and you can also do it, you wanted to do for the resource group also, right? So now I'm going to selecting here in this subscription, whoever subscriptions are there, now you might have that is a multiple subscription in your root tenant, right? Subscriptions, you have taken multiple root in the tenant, you have that is in specific location one subscription, specific location other subscription, and this subscription location I wanted to allow the creator any resource or specific VM specific location only. So hence I'm selecting for the subscription and just say select it. You see this scope is comes under for my subscription. Now, do we have any exclusion inside this, right? Something you wanted to exclude someone resource group, right? By default, this subscription, every resource group would be applied, whoever it is, right? In this subscription, whatever the resource groups are, all the resource groups are should be applied by default. but I don't want to do that some specific resource group. You need to add that is in exclusion, right? So I don't want to do anything exclusion now in this exclusion option. Now you can give this is definition here. Okay, so what is the definition here? Actually, this is what you're going to do this. Okay, as I said, by default you have policy has been created, it is inbuilt it already, right? I wanted to have the requirement. I wanted to select for the, okay, allowed. I need to allow the specific region location. These are all policy definitions by default created, and inbuilt policies are there. When you scroll down little, which is relevant policy, you need to choose this. You see this? There is a allowed location for resource group, but I am selecting for the allowed location. Okay, select this add. My requirement is specific allowed location. Now this version preview recently added. It was not there earlier. Okay, and what is this version here? If something additional new feature been added in this from the Microsoft, that is going to be overwritten. Okay, when you click on this one hash, this thing what you call asterisk. Okay, asterisk means this is above the tab in your keyboard. What it says here, these options you select will determine the major version this assignment will reference. You can choose whether to automatically enroll in a minor versions upgrades or previews. All assignment will always receive the patch changes automatically is get updated. It is additionally added, is recently added. If you say no, I mean if you say yes, automatically enroll that is in, so minor version changes. So let's keep the default one. Okay, there's no affected in this. You can either enable or not enable, but this recently added this one. Okay, now you see this assignment name. We gave that is in allowed location. You wanted to have some customization, you can manage it. Allow VM specific location. There's no space taking, right? Okay, this is for the customized display name. You can do it for the understanding, or you can just copy paste. Also, you can detailed manner. You can update into the description also. Okay. So policy enforcement, this is a default one, and if you don't, you just policy create, you don't want to apply, you can disable it. Okay, policy created, you wanted to assign, then you click on the enforcement. Now the important point here, you just define the policy, what is actually you needed, right? What is actually we needed here? We are policy applying to the subscription, and policy we decided to allowed location, but which location you wanted to allow, you have not mentioned, and that is comes under for the parameter. That is comes under parameter. Now you tell here which locations you wanted to. You see this allow location and select here. As I said, for I would need to go to central India, right? I'm saying that is in this location only I should allow to create a VM, right? Select this. Okay.